How do you know if that hit to the head was actually a concussion? Well, in this video, I'm going to teach you specifically what to look for, as well as the four most common types of symptoms, so that you can get back to safely training on the trails as fast as possible. Hey, it's Coach Eric here, bringing you weekly training and racing tips, especially for the off-road triathlete. Today is the first of a 3-video series on concussion, so be sure to check out those other 2 videos to really enhance your concussion knowledge. When I'm not training as a triathlete, I'm working as a neuropsychologist, specially trained in the assessment and management of athletes with concussions. I have helped thousands of athletes return to their sport after a concussion feeling 100%. It can be difficult to tell if you've had a concussion, so by the end of this video, you'll be able to identify the concussion symptoms and the 4 main groups of symptoms that you really should be looking for so that you can get back to training safely on the trails. For you triathletes, a concussion is most likely to occur on the mountain bike or even a road bike, but I have seen some athletes slip and fall on the pool deck or hit their head doing backstroke against the wall, or even getting hit in the open water swim. So you need to know what a concussion is and the symptoms to look for, because if you hit your head again while you're recovering from a concussion, you're most likely to feel much worse and really prolong your recovery. Now, by definition, a concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury, but as many of you probably already know, it can be anything from mild. It's merely classified as mild because there's not any bleeding or bruising in the brain. If you have either one of those things, you have a more severe brain injury than a concussion. Now, the helmet you wear could save your life or prevent a fracture or prevent bleeding in the brain, but a helmet does not prevent concussion necessarily. If you remember anything from this video, know that concussions occur all the time while you're wearing a helmet. This is because helmets don't prevent the brain from moving inside the skull when there's impact, and so there's damage down to the individual cells of the brain that a helmet just can't protect and prevent. Now, when it comes to protection with a helmet, as long as it's got the Consumer Product Safety Committee sticker, it should be, for the most part, protective in that sense. Price doesn't matter too much in terms of protectiveness. Price usually involves a lighter weight or more ventilation, which is another video. Okay, so let's identify a concussion. You hit your head, or you have a whiplash type injury. Did you know you actually don't have to hit your head to have a concussion? That's sometimes what happens in car accidents. But back to likely hitting your head as a triathlete. If you lose consciousness, even for a second, you've had a concussion. We don't have to go any further. But not very many people actually lose consciousness when they have a concussion. So the next thing to look for is if you have any type of memory loss or amnesia surrounding the hit to the head. So an example would be, you remember being on your bike, you're going around a turn, and the next thing you know, you're on the ground looking at your friend, asking you if you're okay. So that little bit of amnesia is a pretty clear sign that there was a concussion. That can even happen right before the injury or right after the injury. You may remember hitting your head, but then the next thing you remember, you're sitting in the car 5 minutes later and you're not sure how exactly that you got there, other than that a friend told you that you walked there. The third thing to look for, because you don't have to lose consciousness or have any amnesia to have a concussion, even though they're obvious signs, any type of disorientation, confusion, even for a moment, feeling like you've got your bell rung or seeing stars, are all indicators that a concussion has occurred. So if you've had any of those 3 markers of concussion, the loss of consciousness, any type of amnesia, or any type of disorientation, you've had a concussion. Even with those things, it can be tough to tell if you're not quite sure, if you're alone. And so there's about 20 symptoms of concussion that you're also looking for. You may experience all 20 something, you may just experience a couple. Everyone's a little bit different. But we're going to go over the 4 groups of symptoms to make it a little bit easier to identify what you're looking for. It's also important to remember that you will likely experience these from right away or within a day or two after the injury to the head. You're not going to all of a sudden have symptoms from a concussion 3 weeks after you had the injury if you felt fine prior to that time. So it's going to pop up pretty soon after you've had the injury. So the 4 main categories of symptoms to look for are physical symptoms, cognitive symptoms, sleep symptoms, and emotional or mood symptoms. And it's important to remember that you're comparing these to how you normally feel. So if you normally have trouble falling asleep, then trouble falling asleep would not necessarily be a concussion symptom for you. But look at all these based on an individual basis. So the physical symptoms. Headache is the most common symptom of concussion and an example of a physical symptom, yet there's some people who have a concussion and never experience a headache. So the other physical symptoms include nausea, vomiting, lighter noise sensitivity, fatigue, dizziness, balance problems, vision changes like blurry or double vision. Cognitive symptoms include difficulty with attention, concentration, hand-eye coordination speed, reaction time, short-term memory, feeling mentally slowed down, feeling mentally foggy. Sleep symptoms you're looking for are difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, sleeping more than normal, less than normal, taking naps if you're not used to doing that. Anything related to abnormal sleep. Emotional symptoms can be increased irritability or feeling cranky. Again, this is more than normal. And while this does happen, so it doesn't give you an excuse to snap at everyone, but certainly any mood fluctuations, sadness, anything uncharacteristic can be a sign of a concussion. If you've had any of those symptoms or a combination thereof after hitting your head, you should definitely see a concussion specialist. It's very important to note also that you should not return to high-risk contact activities where you might be at increased risk of hitting your head again until you are 100% recovered. If you're like most triathletes, I know you're going to push through the symptoms, push through the injury. You're extremely tough and dedicated, but this is not the injury to do that. And if you do any type of activity make yourself worse, you can essentially prolong the injury, and that's definitely not what we want. One example is if your headache and dizziness goes away in 2 days, that's fantastic, but maybe you have some subtle balance difficulties, reaction time isn't quite back to normal, and you get back on the trail, on the mountain bike, and it causes you to fall on terrain that you normally would be able to navigate. So just be cautious, get cleared by a concussion specialist, and anything that's not normal is something that you're going to want to look for because you know your ability level, and this injury really is an individual injury. So now that you know about concussion, how to specifically identify it and the main common symptoms. Okay, so now you know what a concussion is and what to look for. So if you or a fellow triathlete hits their head, you can seek the medical treatment that you need so you can get back to racing as safely and as fast as possible. Question of the week, how did you know that you had a concussion? Be sure to connect with me in the comments below and share with the community. I hope this video was helpful for you. Be sure to check out the other 2 videos in the series on concussion. New video next week, and until then, I will see you on the trails.